Captain Mathews had spent decades leading Miami Metro, sharp-eyed and politically savvy, but there was always something different about Dexter Morgan. His unnerving calmness at crime scenes, his almost supernatural ability to find killers, and that unsettling fascination with blood. None of it ever seemed quite right. And yet, Mathews, a man known for spotting lies and deception, never called him out. Did Mathews know more than he let on? Could he have been the silent witness to Miami's darkest secret? Captain Tom Mathews is one of those characters who, at first glance, seems like a textbook example of a seasoned, no-nonsense lawman. As the longtime captain at Miami Metro, Mathews was the kind of guy who had seen it all. He wasn't just another cop. He was politically savvy, always playing the long game, and had a knack for navigating the murky waters of law enforcement bureaucracy. His sharp instincts and ability to manage the pressures of his role made him an essential part of Miami Metro's leadership. But there was more to Mathews than his title and polished exterior, especially when it came to his connection with Dexter Morgan. What set Mathews apart from other characters in Dexter's orbit was his close relationship with Harry Morgan, Dexter's adoptive father. Harry wasn't just a fellow officer to Mathews, they were partners and trusted friends. Together, they worked on some of Miami's most challenging cases, forming a bond built on mutual respect and shared dedication to justice. This friendship ran deep, and it's fair to say that Harry's influence on Mathews extended beyond their professional lives. When Harry brought Dexter into his life, Mathews didn't just see the boy as Harry's son, he saw him as part of Harry's legacy. This connection between Harry and Mathews shaped how Mathews viewed Dexter. It's easy to imagine that Mathews felt a sense of responsibility for Dexter, not as a colleague, but as a kind of extended family member. He trusted Harry's judgment implicitly, which might explain why he never looked too closely at some of Dexter's peculiarities. After all, if Harry thought Dexter was someone to protect and guide, who was Mathews to question that? In many ways, this loyalty to Harry likely blinded Mathews to the full extent of Dexter's dark side, or at least gave him a reason to look the other way. When you think about Captain Tom Mathews and Harry Morgan, it's clear they weren't just colleagues, they were partners in every sense of the word. These two seasoned law enforcement officers spent years working side by side, tackling some of Miami's most brutal cases. They had the kind of partnership built on trust, shared experiences, and an understanding that each had the other's back. Mathews often relied on Harry's sharp instincts, and Harry valued Mathews's ability to navigate the tricky political waters of the police department. Together, they were an impressive team, one that probably saved countless lives through their work. But their bond wasn't limited to the professional. Harry and Mathews shared a friendship that extended beyond the walls of Miami Metro. They respected each other deeply, and that respect naturally extended to their families. Mathews knew Harry wasn't just a good cop, he was a man who lived by a strong moral compass. So, when Harry adopted Dexter and brought him into his life, Mathews likely accepted him without question. After all, if Harry vouched for someone, that was good enough for Mathews. That said, their relationship raises an intriguing question. Did Harry ever confide in Mathews about Dexter's dark passenger? Harry was a meticulous man who always seemed to think several steps ahead. It's hard to imagine him sharing the full truth about Dexter's violent tendencies, but at the same time, it's equally hard to believe that Mathews, with his sharp instincts, never picked up on at least part of the story. Perhaps Harry hinted at Dexter's struggles in vague terms, framing them as difficulties in fitting in or channeling his energy. Or maybe Harry trusted Mathews enough to reveal a little more, though probably not the entire truth. What we do know is that Harry created the code to guide Dexter, shaping him into a killer who only targeted those who truly deserved it, criminals who slipped through the cracks of the justice system. While there's no direct evidence that Mathews was aware of the code, he was no fool. He might not have known the details, but it's possible he noticed something different about Dexter. After all, Dexter's composure at crime scenes was uncanny. Where others were horrified or shaken, Dexter seemed oddly at ease, almost like he belonged there. Mathews, as a seasoned officer, must have found this at least a little strange. It's not a stretch to imagine Mathews quietly connecting the dots over time. He knew Harry well enough to understand that he wasn't the kind of man to leave things to chance. If Harry trusted Dexter with the kind of access and authority he had in Miami Metro, Mathews might have assumed there was a reason for it, even if he couldn't fully grasp what that reason was. Maybe Mathews chose not to dig too deeply out of loyalty to Harry, or because he genuinely believed Dexter was helping in ways the justice system couldn't. Captain Tom Mathews had a sharp mind and decades of experience, and anyone with his level of expertise would have noticed that Dexter Morgan wasn't your average blood spatter analyst. From the start, Dexter's calm demeanor stood out. Crime scenes are chaotic and gruesome places, and even the most seasoned detectives find them unsettling. Yet, there was Dexter, completely unfazed, almost as if he found comfort in the blood and carnage. For someone like Mathews, who had spent years observing human behavior, this unusual calmness couldn't have gone unnoticed. Dexter's uncanny ability to locate killers was another red flag. While other officers relied on teamwork, intuition, and evidence to make breakthroughs, Dexter always seemed to have an almost supernatural ability to connect the dots. Time and again, he zeroed in on suspects with an accuracy that bordered on suspicious. Mathews, being politically savvy and highly observant, had to wonder how Dexter always managed to be in the right place at the right time. Did he chalk it up to luck, or did he suspect there was something darker at play? Then there was Dexter's obsession with blood analysis. Sure, it was his job, but the way he approached it felt more personal than professional. Dexter seemed to thrive on the intricacies of blood spatter patterns in a way that went beyond the duties of a crime lab technician. His fascination was too intense to ignore, and Mathews likely noticed that Dexter didn't treat his work as just another 9 to 5. He wasn't just solving crimes, he was studying them as if he was part of the story. Throughout the series, there were several moments when Mathews appeared to raise an eyebrow at Dexter's behavior. Whether it was his strange composure or his uncanny track record, there were times when Mathews seemed to be holding back questions. Maybe it was during a conversation where Dexter's answers felt too rehearsed, or perhaps it was a crime scene where Dexter's conclusions were eerily on point. Mathews wasn't the kind of man to jump to conclusions, but he was also no stranger to seeing patterns where others couldn't. So, why didn't Mathews act on his suspicions? Did he really not know, or was he choosing to stay silent? It's possible that Mathews, in his own way, saw the clues, but decided that some questions were better left unasked. After all, if Dexter's work was helping solve cases and clean up the city, was it worth turning his world upside down to dig deeper? Captain Mathews is a complex character, and his decisions regarding Dexter Morgan reflect just how complicated his motivations might have been. Let's start with the most obvious reason he might have kept quiet: loyalty to Harry Morgan. And let's not forget Mathews' ability to play the long game. He was always thinking several steps ahead, weighing the pros and cons of every decision. In Dexter, he might have seen a secret weapon, someone who could quietly take care of the problems that the justice system couldn't handle. Dexter's kills weren't random. They were calculated, and in some twisted way, they served a purpose. For a man like Mathews, who understood the harsh realities of law enforcement, having someone like Dexter on his side might have seemed like a risk worth taking. Captain Tom Mathews was not a man easily fooled. With decades of experience under his belt, Mathews had seen more than his fair share of lies, deception, and carefully constructed facades. That's why his relationship with Dexter Morgan is so fascinating. Dexter, with his carefully maintained normal life and charmingly awkward demeanor, fooled almost everyone around him, except for the few who caught glimpses of the darkness beneath the surface. Mathews might have been one of them. The real question is, how much did he actually suspect? Dexter's peculiarities were hard to miss, especially for someone as observant as Mathews. One of the most striking was Dexter's eerie calmness at crime scenes. For most people, even seasoned detectives, standing over a bloody corpse is unsettling. There's a natural discomfort that comes with facing human brutality up close, but Dexter never seemed disturbed. Instead, he treated crime scenes like puzzles, almost as if he enjoyed the challenge. His composed demeanor wasn't just professional, it was unnerving. Mathews had to notice. How could he not? A man with Mathews' instincts would surely have questioned how Dexter could maintain such a stoic attitude in the face of such violence. He could also tell if you haven't subscribed to our channel, so why don't you take a second and do that? Then there was Dexter's uncanny ability to locate killers. Time and time again, he seemed to be a step ahead of everyone else. Whether it was connecting dots others missed or uncovering suspects with almost supernatural precision, Dexter's success was too consistent to be pure luck. Mathews had likely worked with talented detectives before, but Dexter's track record was extraordinary, perhaps too extraordinary. While Mathews never voiced outright suspicion, he might have quietly wondered how Dexter was always in the right place at the right time. Another clue lay in Dexter's obsessive focus on blood analysis. Sure, it was his job, but Dexter approached his work with an intensity that went beyond professional dedication. Blood wasn't just evidence to him, it was personal. His fascination with patterns and splatter angles bordered on the obsessive, something Mathews would have picked up on. Did Mathews ever wonder why Dexter seemed so deeply connected to his work? If he did, he chose not to address it directly. There were also moments in the series where Mathews appeared to look the other way. One example is during the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation. As Miami Metro scrambled to identify the killer, Dexter's role as a blood spatter analyst gave him a unique position to manipulate evidence. While other officers might not have noticed, Mathews wasn't just any officer. He had the experience and the instincts to recognize when something didn't add up. Yet, he never seemed to seriously question Dexter's involvement. Was it denial, or was Mathews deliberately avoiding the truth? Ultimately, Mathews's interactions with Dexter are filled with subtle hints and unanswered questions. His occasional comments about Dexter's peculiarities suggest he noticed more than he let on. Whether he chose to ignore these signs out of loyalty to Harry, a belief in Dexter's mission, or self-preservation, Mathews's silence speaks volumes. The critical moments in their relationship leave us wondering, was Mathews protecting Dexter, or was he simply turning a blind eye to something he didn't want to confront? If Captain Mathews knew or even suspected that Dexter Morgan was a serial killer, it opens up one of the most intriguing moral dilemmas in the series. Should he have exposed Dexter, or was it better for everyone that he stayed silent? This question doesn't have an easy answer. It forces us to grapple with issues of justice, loyalty, and the blurred lines between right and wrong. If he suspected Dexter's dark tendencies and chose to do nothing, he effectively allowed a serial killer to continue operating. Even though Dexter targeted criminals who had escaped justice, murder is still murder. By not acting, Mathews might have been enabling Dexter's actions, giving him free rein to decide who lived and who died. That's a dangerous level of power for anyone to wield, no matter how noble their intentions might seem. From this perspective, Mathews' inaction could be seen as a betrayal of the very justice system he was sworn to uphold. On the other hand, Dexter wasn't your typical serial killer. His victims were carefully chosen, criminals who had slipped through the cracks, people who posed a genuine threat to society. If Mathews suspected this, his silence could be interpreted as a pragmatic decision. In a flawed justice system where evidence is sometimes lost and guilty individuals walk free, Dexter's actions might have seemed like a brutal but effective solution. From this angle, Mathews might have believed that Dexter was doing more good than harm, even if his methods were morally questionable. Loyalty to Harry Morgan adds another layer of complexity to this ethical dilemma. Mathews and Harry had a long-standing friendship built on trust and mutual respect. If Harry confided in Mathews about Dexter's struggles or hinted at the code, Mathews may have felt a responsibility to honor Harry's wishes. Turning Dexter in would have been a betrayal not just of Dexter, but of Harry's legacy. For Mathews, staying silent might have felt like the only way to preserve that bond. Then, there's the issue of self-preservation. Mathews wasn't just a cop, he was a political figure in law enforcement. Admitting he knew or suspected Dexter's secret would have destroyed his career and reputation. It would have raised questions about his oversight and judgment, potentially bringing down the entire department. For Mathews, the risks of exposing Dexter might have outweighed the benefits. Captain Tom Mathews is one of the most intriguing characters in the Dexter universe. On the surface, he's the epitome of a seasoned cop and political survivor, calm under pressure, sharp in his observations, and always a step ahead when it came to navigating the complexities of law enforcement. But beneath that polished exterior lies a character filled with moral ambiguity and unanswered questions, especially when it comes to his connection with Dexter Morgan. Mathews' role is a reminder that even the most composed individuals carry secrets of their own and make decisions that exist in morally gray areas. What makes Mathews stand out is how layered his character is. He's not a one-dimensional authority figure. He's a man with a deep history and ties that complicate his judgment. His long-standing friendship with Harry Morgan is one of the most significant factors in his story. Harry's influence loomed large over Mathews, shaping not only his professional decisions, but also his personal loyalties. This bond with Harry likely played a pivotal role in how he viewed Dexter. To Mathews, Dexter wasn't just another blood spatter analyst. He was Harry's son, someone Harry trusted and believed in. That connection may have clouded Mathews' judgment, making him more inclined to ignore the signs of Dexter's dark side. But how much did Mathews truly know about Dexter? That's a question the show never fully answers, leaving fans to speculate. Did Mathews suspect Dexter was hiding something sinister, but choose not to dig too deeply? Or did he piece together the truth and decide that silence was the best course of action? His occasional comments about Dexter's peculiarities, his eerie calmness at crime scenes, his uncanny ability to find killers, hint that Mathews wasn't completely in the dark. Perhaps he saw enough to suspect the truth, but chose not to confront it outright. If Mathews did know, or at least strongly suspect, Dexter's secret, the bigger question is whether he regretted his decisions. Did he ever lie awake at night, wondering if he should have done something differently? Or did he rationalize his silence by telling himself that Dexter was a necessary evil, someone who brought justice in a way the system couldn't? It's possible that Mathews carried a mix of feelings: loyalty to Harry, fear of the consequences of exposing Dexter, and perhaps even a sense of relief that someone like Dexter was handling the city's worst criminals. Mathews' complexity makes it hard to pin down exactly where he stood, and that ambiguity is part of what makes his character so fascinating. In the end, Mathews' legacy is as complicated as the choices he made. He was a man who operated in a world of rules and order, yet he may have turned a blind eye to the chaos hiding in plain sight. His decisions, whether driven by loyalty, pragmatism, or self-preservation, raise an intriguing question. Could Captain Mathews have been the ultimate enabler of Miami's deadliest secret? His silence, intentional or not, allowed Dexter to continue his double life, making him a key player in the story, even if his role was more subtle than overt. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.